Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, addressing all aspects of the digital enterprise, inspiring connection without boundaries and creation without limits. Thank you for tuning in. Here are your hosts, Tom Singer and Craig Brown.
You have found another episode of the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, and this is part 2 of a special episode that was recorded live on stage at the Digital Intersect event that was put on by the Digital Enterprise Society in Detroit just a couple of weeks ago. Make sure you go back and listen to the first half of this episode, and then pick up the thoughts from Mark Pendergast and Craig Brown about everything PLM. Enjoy the episode.
So our next question is, can you have a digital thread without a digital twin? And then it's got a second question, can you have a digital twin without a digital thread?
Yeah, maybe it'd help if we had one term. I don't have a smart, intelligent answer for that question.
Well, let me take a crack.
Yeah, I mean, the digital things exist. There's digital representations. I call them surrogates because I prefer that word. I think it's important that they coexist. I think a thread's different than a twin. A twin's a point in time. It's a point that you make a decision. It's a configuration, if you will. The thread is what makes it possible. So I think that would be my distinction.
Well, I think you can. Again, it's a matter of how effective is it. Mm-hmm. So you can make a digital, I got people who tell me their CAD model is their digital twin. Mm-hmm. I got people who tell me the simulation model is a digital twin.
Well, they're both right.
Is it informed by how things are actually going on in the field? Not necessarily, mm-hmm. but I do have them. Mm-hmm. I can have a digital thread without a digital twin, mm-hmm. because I could never just accumulate all information into something smart enough that I could make a decision. And so I think that's, you can, but it's in the same form that the guys building the pyramids had a digital thread, right? You can have various levels of performance of these things. And I forget who it was, somebody, I think this morning said, what value are you getting out of it? You can have one, you can call it that, but at the end of the day, if it's making you money, then you've got an effective one, and that's what you want. You just don't want one, you want one that's printing money for you.
Your name and what you want to add or what your question is.
Yes, hi. My name is Pat Hilberg from Oakland University, and actually I've done a couple podcasts with Craig. So I think we should go back a little bit to basics. I've got a few questions, I'll ask one at a time. What is your definition of digital twin?
A surrogate at a point in time that you make a decision. That's my definition.
Surrogate of a point in time where you make a decision.
Yeah, so tomorrow it'll be different because I got to make a different decision. That's what I mean by my hopefully succinct description, right? It's just a definition.
Is that, how does digital fit into that?
Say that again?
How does digital fit into that?
How's it different than a financial model or something?
Right, it's in a computer as opposed to a drawing or a cartoon or a video. Of course, videos are digital too, but anyways.
Yeah, no, I think it's a virtual representation of some physical object. And I think Siemens had a slide kind of that effect, that basically what you want to do is, without going out and having to either build or destroy or whatever, some physical thing, you want to gain insights into what it might be doing or what it might do in the future. And to me, it's that virtual nature. Everything we're talking about today comes up, it's cheaper to push electrons around than it is to push atoms around. That's one of my favorite sayings. And if you can collect enough electrons to give you insights into what the atoms are doing, you're making money.
Does a digital twin necessarily include spatial data, geometric data?
Well, absolutely. It may not.
No, it doesn't have to.
So not necessarily.
So if I've got a software system that's entirely software up in Amazon running, I can have a digital twin of that. It's got no atoms in it anywhere, either in the virtual or the real. But I'm getting insights into something that's harder to move around by looking at something that's easier to move around.
Yeah, but I'm biased. I mean, I'm talking about software that controls mechanical systems. So,
Okay, car
so
guy.
I do want the interface to the mechanical
GM guy.
Yeah, that's true. I'm guilty. Yeah.
So a digital twin of strictly semantic data, how things interrelate to others, is consistent with your definition.
That's this is not fair, Patrick, but that's the digital thread. The thread is made up of the semantic richness of the things you're trying to connect, right? The thread connects stuff. To me, the way you get a thread is this semantic broker, for lack of a better word. I realize I'm throwing more words out there, everybody, but the way to know how to navigate the information that's connected so that you can build a digital twin, the surrogate, and make decisions about it. So to me, the semantic network, if that's the way you're representing the language, right, that tells you how these things are all related, that's more the digital thread. But, you know, at SimData, we talk about it as the web. Peter had wonderful pictures this morning about the web. It is a web. And how you connect the nodes of the web is how you make a twin. And then the twin, you can make decisions. So that's the way we like to talk about it.
Well, I'll go the other way.
Okay.
Back when I was in college, we talked about knowledge management, and you had all the little expert systems. That's where I first got my exposure to essentially what was a digital twin. And you could say, you know, a horse is a mammal, is an animal, is a biological entity. And you could interrogate these semantic models just by themselves, and they were a virtual representation of physical things that could give you insight into what was going on in the physical things. So to me, it's a digital twin because it's virtual, it's cheap to move around, and it gives you insights. That's kind of the big three for me, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Okay. And then last, and I will sit down.
You know, this is not fair having a professor ask these questions, but keep going.
You want to see debates, come to my class.
Yeah, I bet.
You're going to get graded after this,
Yeah.
right?
I'm sure.
The term product lifecycle showed up in the Harvard Business Review in 1965. Is your definition of PLM consistent with something that would have existed in 1965?
You want to go first?
Well, my definition of PLM is consistent with the first caveman that was trying to put a spear together. So I think we've had these things. This is nothing new. 10,000 years ago, we were doing product lifecycle management. We just didn't know it, and we hadn't rebranded it the 5,000 times we've done it since then. It's a business philosophy. It's a conceptual entity that we are slowly, incrementally learning how to better leverage to get better results.
So it's much more than CAD.
Yeah, it's whatever you want it to be that helps you say, I have a product, I want a successful outcome. What are these things that help me manage that product from the ideation all the way till it's in the landfill? And, you know, and all the phases in between. I'm a capital PLM guy. There's people that do little PLM, which is kind of PDM with some fluff on it, but I'm a capital PLM guy. And I think we've been doing capital PLM as long as there have been people around.
Yeah. I agree with Mark. And I just, that definition, I presume it wasn't about a digital model of a 3D geometry thing. It should have been what the words are, product life cycle. And that means you know how you're going to dispose of it. And in this world where we don't have enough resources, you know how you're going to regenerate it, reuse it, right? Even if it means melt it down and start over, that's fine. And so I think product life cycle shall be that, needs to be that. We are all professionals in it. We need to make it that, right? There was a summary of, that Peter and the crew at SimData put together. I wasn't a part of it, about sustainability. And sustainability is becoming a much bigger issue, whether you're talking about the carbon we're putting in the air, or whether we're talking about other things like you can't get the resource you need because you can't ship it across an ocean for whatever reasons, right? Like our recent experience. I think sustainability is going to become a much bigger deal. And so maybe it'll become SLM, sustainability lifecycle management. But you know what? That's really product lifecycle management. And it needs to stay that way. And so those of you that have a PLM in your offerings, make bloody sure it's what I just said. It's really broad. And if you can't go the whole way because you're just little PDM, as Mark said, I like the way you said that. Well, then just admit that. We do CAD vaulting and we manage physical releases of assemblies, but we don't go further. That's okay, that's needed, right? But let's not oversell it. And I'm, as I got the PLM leader job, I took it for what it's worth. This was part of what I battled is people that, oh yeah, you mean the CAD guys. Like, no, I mean the rest of it. There's 3/4 of the rest of the company we don't talk to because we're not making the part, right? We buy the part or it's got a bunch of software or gosh forbid, it's got all those electronic things. I mean, there's more to a product. And so it's whatever's in the product. And, back in caveman land, it was an axe made of materials that you found and you started putting together. And that's no different than a product, which is an electric vehicle that meets our needs from getting from point A to point B.
I'll briefly, and then I'll take off, briefly plug my course, but it's Managing Product Life Cycles for a Sustainable Future.
Oh,
which
cool.
Which is what you just picked up on.
Excellent.
So, thanks much.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick.
We're in trouble now.
He's going to ask you.
I won't ask a question. I want to add some Peter Bolello, some Data's president and CEO. One of the things I don't know if I mentioned, I don't think anyone else mentioned, is kind of this idea about optimization, life cycle optimization, right? Mm-hmm. This end-to-end view or continuous view, we like to say the circular economy, is right to market. I really like that phrase because that's really what we as companies are trying to achieve. Right product to the right market, the right time, for the right time, for the right life cycle, for the right cost, the right sustainability, right everything. Because that's the only way the company's going to maximize its return on investment. And that the right may change over time, right. And it may change by different markets. I mean, the right market, if you're selling something in, let's say, Southeast Asia versus North America, you're not going to sell the same product. It may be the same purpose, but it may be defeatured, as an example.
Cup holders.
Cup holders, yeah, that's right. People in Germany do not use cup holders, but here we have to have all these cup holders. But just many examples like that. So that is what changes, and I fully agree with you guys. Life cycle is life cycle is life cycle. It hasn't changed. It's always been there, as you said. But right to market is what we're focused on, and the elements that drive that can change. So finally, we're understanding sustainability, even though it's always been there too. And I think back to the Club of Rome in, 68 or 69, when they got together in Europe and said, we can't continue to use the resources like we're using today. We have to think of reuse, repurposing, remanufacturing. Recycling, they did very well. Some of the other things, that's more of a more recent thing. But if we think right to market, then that's how we're managing the life cycle. And then these things become enabling technologies or enabling processes for it. So just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Thanks,
Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I agree. And I think there was a slide we had with the web, the digital web instead. And I think that kind of represents this multi-dimensional delivery of the product that is different things to different people. And I know Craig and I got involved in that with mass customization. And that was gut-wrenching for us in GM.
So isn't the web more like cloth instead of a thread?
Depends on how good it is.
Well, there's a bunch of threads, and they're interwoven. And if they're interwoven well, it's cloth. This word about digital thread, I would like to propose, maybe we should talk a bit more about webs and cloth.
And digital looms.
Things. Huh?
Digital looms.
Well, yeah, we probably need a loom. Yeah. Actually, that's where computers came from. It should be. The original loom was a digital computer, but that's a history lesson.
I think we're degrading here.
We probably.
We're going to wrap this up.
I'm taking control again. We're going to the next question. So, to what degree do digital engineering tools allow such effective remote work as we experienced the last few years?
I think it's been phenomenal. Right? We all entered this phase in early 2020. We were all doing whatever we were doing, and we're like, holy crap, how are we going to keep working? And then the few chiefs that I followed after I retired at GM, they're like, actually, we're more efficient. We're able to get the same stuff done. And how is that possible? Well, first there was the web technology, so you could do all those complicated things like CAD geometry and various kinds of testing through a web interface. Right? That wasn't available not that long ago. So that was fortunate. And then I think the rest of it is, the databases are secure, right? There's enough security that this fear about people working at home and it would make your product unsecure. Actually, we were just lucky because the technology's here. It prevents unintended theft. There can still be theft, don't get me wrong, but you could even track that occurred and decide what you want to do about that. So I think it absolutely, the digital tools allowed us to continue as enterprises during this era where we had to isolate. And thank goodness for networks, thank goodness for computers, and the software that runs on all of it.
Well, I think it worked most of the time. I think we had some notable exceptions. We had some custom stuff that we said, oh my goodness, how many queries can somebody make to a database back at the mothership from this client? And, we had a lot of glitches that we had to work through.
So did you guys do that? Did you fix that on site, or did you fix it from your house?
We fixed whatever the heck we had to do. But
where were you? At home?
At home, yeah.
Yeah, see.
But again, we had guys, not to name any names, but there was a very impressive electronics design tool that queries the library like crazy, and if you didn't have a local copy of the library at home, you got killed.
Oh, so you created
So there was stuff like that you had to work out the details of. But I tell you what, I had an interesting conversation with my son the other day. He said, Dad, I don't think they're going to ever ask us to come back to work. We're getting too much done. Yeah. Nobody's tapping us on the shoulder. We're just blasting through all our projects. I think they're just going to leave us home forever.
Which doesn't that tell you something about corporate culture and meeting culture and the waste? Just an observation, maybe.
Hi, Greg Roth, Siemens. I'd like to continue on this particular topic theme, cybersecurity.
Okay.
So years ago, I was heavily involved with evaluating, pushing things into the cloud. This is 7, 8, 10 years ago. And there was strong resistance across the board.
We don't trust you. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and the real question was security, right?
Yeah.
Our data is going to be up there. It's vulnerable. What could we could lose IP. If we fast forward now, and actually through the pandemic, which is an interesting spin on things, I'm curious to get your viewpoint. Now we see a trend change, right? Cloud, SaaS solutions now becoming much more popular. Some data has done a recent investigation in this and seen the cultural trends being changed. But I'm curious, from your viewpoint, what was triggering that? Why now the change from total resistance to now, it's something people consider?
Well, I think all this is risk management, right? So in the mindset of February 2020, holy crap, the workforce has to isolate for health reasons. What are our other choices? Well, there's this cloud thing. Even if it's insecure, it still keeps us operating. So as an executive, you just made a choice. It's like, I'm uncertain about this security thing, but I got to do it because I don't have any other choice. And then lo and behold, a year later, it actually is working pretty well. And nobody's taken advantage of me yet. Now, the paranoid person that understands computers are computers and whoever's operating them can get the data off of them, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think there's still that suspicion. I mean, I've talked with all kinds of different product companies, and they all have this cautious, we'll use the cloud because it's available, but we're untrustworthy. And it's actually not of companies like yours building the tools. It actually has to do with the guy who's owning the data, who manages the data, right? So the AWS side of your agreement, right? And what should we really be paranoid about that? It's Amazon. The big car company doesn't want to give the keys of the kingdom to the big Amazon. I mean, the big Amazon's already big, right? So I think that is still an issue, but the pandemic made it, hold your nose, hold your eyes, and hope that you don't get messed up. So I don't think they had a choice. And then, like any bicycle you start riding, you're like, it's not that bad. Maybe we should keep doing it.
Good analogy. It's like leap of faith, right?
You're right. Now, the startups don't have any choice, right? They have to do something, and they have to do the affordable thing, and that is the affordable thing by comparison, right? So it'd be interesting to watch for the next couple of years, right? First, is there a breach? That's the paranoid side, that somebody took advantage of the data storage. Or is it just, it's all encrypted, don't worry about it. It enables faster businesses, whether you're a small startup or a big OEM, and it'll be the new norm. Okay. It just will. And I credit to Amazon and their competitors. They'll make a lot of money at this. So if you're an investor, pay attention, right? Okay. But it's hard to tell a products company, any kind of product, You could be talking to a car company or a consumer products company. Oh, trust me, I'll manage your data for you.
I wonder
And
if-
sell it to who, right?
Is part of it the mental calculus, right? You have companies with these IT organizations, and they get hacked, spamware, and they're considered highly skilled. Is there kind of an equation going on in the culture saying, look, Amazon, they're expert at this. They do
That's a
this
really
day
good,
in, day out.
yeah, Greg, that's a really good point that this is why I do commercial anytime, right? Is the guy that you're buying it from actually has better experience at managing the risk.
Right.
So you just make sure the contracts make it clear, and you're managing this risk for us.
Right.
No spillage of data, even to your own internal data scientists. As long as there's no spillage of data, I'm going to keep using your services.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
You're right, they're probably more skilled.
I forgot the original question, but I'll just talk anyway.
Well, he can repeat it.
One of my academic friends says that in academia, life moves forward through R&D, and I think we're seeing some of that, retirements and deaths. So I think some of us gray beards have moved on. The young kids coming up grew up digital. They're not afraid of it. But I think Greg hit the nail on the head. IT is very conservative in some ways, and especially in security. And they were not going to change, and because it was an unknown risk factor. They didn't know how to manage up there. They didn't know what the unknown unknowns were. Mm-hmm. It was just a horrible place to go. And I will tell you, coming from IT, the IT culture, the worst thing you can do is make a decision, because then you can be blamed for it. So when you take the decision out of their hands and just say, gun to the head, gotta go.
Yeah.
They were pretty effective at moving to that new technology because it wasn't their fault. They couldn't be blamed. And then they started to learn. And I think this is why, it's so much the fast to market stuff we got, fast to fail. Well, they went up there and they probably failed a couple of times. I mean, I've heard some horror stories of people trying to get stuff up in the cloud quick. But once they were up there, they said, oh, it isn't so bad. They try out the chairs. They're kind of nice. They got these nice service people that are helping them with stuff. They got dashboards. They got all this stuff. And I think they're saying, okay, well, maybe this isn't so bad. But you couldn't get past that little bump of, if I do it, it's my fault. And again, this drives me crazy in IT because I'm the opposite. But the thing is, you're up there. And what they're going to learn, probably the hard way, is you are much more vulnerable up in the cloud to stupidity. If you're stupid on-prem, nobody's probably going to notice. But if you're stupid in the cloud and you say, oh, yeah, let's just make that public read, then you're freaking public read everywhere. And so it's scarier. I don't think the IT guys have figured this out yet. But so I think that's just it. The risk profile is very different in the cloud. Yeah, you're probably not going to get hacked because these guys are pros. Yeah. But if your guy flips a bit and says, hey, make this world read, it's the world read, not just everybody within your firewall.
So the quote of famous comedian, it's tough to fix stupid, right?
Yeah. well, but again, I tell you what, cybersecurity, I got nailed on the spam email they sent out. So I self-volunteered for cybersecurity training. And I tell you what, it pissed me off so bad because they went through and said, oh, well, people do this because they're inattentive or they don't like to follow the rules. I tell you what, I did it because I was over my head in work. I was just trying to slam emails off the pile, and one come by and said, hey, you're out of email quota. Fine, give me some. Oh, spam training. So until business can say, we are working our people like rented mules, and they can't even put two thoughts together to do anything because they're trying to hit the next quarterly profits. Cybersecurity is going nowhere. I mean, people are going to push buttons that they aren't supposed to because they're just hand them out. And I don't know how we get away from that. In fact, we had a conversation over lunch over that, is how do you slow us down enough that you can engage your brain and you're not just slinging stuff wherever it can go? Because that's how social engineering is going to kill everybody with cybersecurity right now.
Yeah. Fine, thanks.
And thank you. All right, so as we wrap this up, I have one final question for you. And then all of us who are live in the room, we have to go to happy hour where there's drinks and food. The people listening to the podcast should have been here at the live event in order to be able to participate in happy hour. However, my last question for you is, how do organizations like Digital Enterprise Society and other groups, how do we attract more younger people to come and participate in things like this event and other things that are going on within industry?
Wow, that's
Well, I'll give you my 2 cents. As a PLM elder, I have a lot of things to share. And while I don't want to work full-time, I'm absolutely interested in sharing experiences. So to the younger generation, just ask. And this is an event. It's easier sometimes face-to-face, as Tom and I talk about all the time. So now that we're coming out of this era of isolation, let's get back together. Just ask us. You know, if we got gray hair, and my badge says elder and advisor, that's exactly what I want to do for the next few years of my life, right? And so we have insights. That's just ask. You know, that's all you got to do.
Yeah, that's a tough one, and I've struggled with that. In my spare time, I mentor robotics teams, and it's really rewarding to see these kids, you know, kind of step up and learn some technology and ask questions, and it's a very tight mentoring relationship. But as you look at new hires coming in, I think to some extent this stuff intimidates them, and they're afraid to ask those questions. And I think that's the hurdle we need to get over is, you know, I really didn't get interested in this stuff till I was in for probably 15 years because I was just worried about doing my little piece of the world. And PLM, capital PLM, is so huge. Yeah, I think it's hard for the younger people to even wrap their brain around it. And I think part of this is on the leadership, because we never talk in those terms. We talk about quarterly profits, we talk about this operation, we talk about all these little things, and we never really talk about the big picture. I think one of the biggest knocks I've got on our whole leadership team, and leadership teams that I've seen everywhere, is they never talk strategy with the new hires. They just tell them, do this one little piece. And I think if you were to reach out to them and say, PLM, capital PLM, this huge thing, you're going to be working in it your whole life, regardless of where you go. You probably ought to go learn something about it. But nobody ever says that to anyone. I do. But the average manager is just so micro-focused.
So, Mark, you're reminding us of one of our members. I hope she's listening. She's out on the West Coast, and she switched which aerospace company she worked for. But this was exactly her input. She had that broader view. And she was really frustrated. She was trying to set up a test rig for a particular aerospace component. And the drawings and other things were out of sync with each other, and she just got really frustrated. What did the manager do? The manager didn't have a solution. The manager said, okay, it's your job. You're now the PLM person to go fix that, which I thought was really callous, right? By the way, she did a fundamentally great job, and now she leads some of our working groups here at the DES. Find the leadership that embraces the big PLM that Mark's talking about, and then step up to the challenge. Whatever it is that is outside of maybe your responsibilities, but the cool thing about all things digital, few search engines away, and you can solve a lot of different problems. And you should just do it. Your company will reward you, rest assured, right? Even if your immediate boss doesn't. Uh-oh, we got him. I'm not answering Paul's question.
Really quick.
This is a really quick follow-on. Paul Hornung from GM. I wanted to follow on to your statement. I've had conversations with some of the educational folks and some of the major PLM system companies and things. I think you're spot on. I've heard the same feedback in the industry about first robotics teams picking up mid-grade CAD packages, and they're all about the here and now and designing that one little widget. But when they come into the group, we get feedback, hey, I want a tool that can do testing. I want a tool that can do verification. I want a tool that helps me as an engineer. I go, man, we have these tools, but they're really complex, and we can look into setting that up for you, and we can have that set up for you in about a year or two. And this new generation wants it now, just now. So I think that's a spot-on statement to say we got to train the next generation to understand that little widget you're working on should be evaluated, should go in through some life cycles, right? So I liked your comment.
Thanks, Paul.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Big round of applause for Mark and Craig for being here for the Digital Battle Live. And for those of you here with us live in the room and those of you listening to the podcast, make sure you tune in every single week to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, where we're going to have more thoughts and ideas for you to have a successful career in PLM and beyond.
I hope you enjoyed part 2 of our special episode that was recorded at Digital Intersect.
You've been listening to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Learn more about what you've heard here today at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Join us again next week for more connection without boundaries and creation without limits.